I once hiked an old and hidden island located practically at the edge of the world. People have been coming here for yonks to see its unique landscapes and eerie sights. But not the same way those who through hike it get to see it. Trekking the Inner Hebrides cloud and mist through rain and fog on their own two legs rather than by car or tour bus is a different experience altogether. And camping under its sky at the steps of its ancient mountains and valleys, soaked in folklore of clan battles and Viking settlements, is truly special. With the weather being so poor lately and my next big hike still a few months away, I started to reflect on revisiting the Skye Trail and the Isle of Skye. And I thought it might be useful to shed some light on this special trail, to at least provide you all with some useful information in your preparation for tackling the stunning hike next summer. So I'm going to tell you about this story. A story that takes place about 5 years ago, back when I was a bit younger, but very green when it came to wild camping and through hiking, but very ambitious. And I had this idea, and the idea was to go through hike this island up in the north of Scotland, which was quite unknown. The hike was relatively new to the hiking world. I was planning to document my time on the island with my camera and a drone, and those were two things that I was pretty new to using as well. So off I went. I left London a few days later. I had a very flexible job back then. Nice and early start, 6 a.m, get on the flight. So yeah, just getting everything together. Got up to Scotland, got up to the Isle of Skye. Didn't really have a plan in place. All I knew was that I would hike from north to south and that I would stay one night in the town of Portree to charge my electronics. Didn't really know where I was going to wild camp. Didn't really know what I was going to eat, but I knew once I would get there that I would find a way. Luckily, who I would find is Laszlo, a Hungarian who had traded the Baltic Mountains for the Scottish Highlands. A seasoned adventurer who I would learn a lot from. We would tackle this hike together and experience the lows, traversing through the bog and the rain and the never-ending incline, but also get to share the incredible highs together. So one of mine and Laszlo's most memorable sections on this hike was hiking the Trotternish Ridge. Stretching over 35 kilometres, the Trotternish Ridge is a challenging yet rewarding trek. It's known for its pathless terrain, requiring navigation skills and a good level of fitness. The day that Laszlo and I tackled the ridge, there was thick cloud, fog and rain. With a lack of path to follow and difficult navigation conditions, there was one or two times where we considered bailing. We managed to get through the navigation part, thankfully to the All Trails downloaded maps, and eventually we noticed the clouds started to open up. And as we started to ascend, we started to get just this incredible view of the ridge and this really unique cloud inversion formation. We couldn't see the landscape below us, but we could see stunning peaks along the ridge. And off in the distance we could see the Cullens as well. The ridge is home to Europe's largest landslides, creating an otherworldly landscape. Other sections of the ridge include the geological wonders like the Quarang, situated at the northern end, and the Old Man of Storr. The Old Man of Storr is one of Skye's most iconic landmarks. It's a 55-metre high pinnacle of basalt rock, formed over millions of years ago by a massive landslide, leaving behind jagged formations shaped further by erosion and weathering. The pinnacle sort of resembles this old man or wizard, steeped in folklore. One tale suggests it represents a giant turned to stone while fleeing enemies, while others link it to the supernatural stories. This whole ridge section, which took us about 1.5 days to complete, was by far the most stunning and my most favourite part of the trip. Other sections of the hike, you walk around mountains and through valleys, but this is probably the most altitude that you will get on the hike, and I would say the best views. So don't skip it. One little tip is to definitely plan ahead and to make sure that the weather is going to be permissible for you to hike it. If the thick cloud and fog had continued for us at the start and we had no views at all, it definitely wouldn't have been worth it. We were just fortunate enough that the weather cleared up later on in the day. So the really good thing about wild camping in Scotland is that Scotland has some of the most relaxed laws in the world when it comes to wild camping, and that's thanks to the Scottish Outdoor Access Code. On top of that, I think the Isle of Skye has some of the best wild camping spots that I've ever been to. So our first night wild camping was at the base of the Quirang, and the Quirang is a surreal and dramatic rock formation on the northern side of the Trotternish Ridge. This is a little further south from where you start the hike, near the Ruahanush headland, which is stunning by the way, and inland from the small village of Fluttergarry. Night number 2 we spent up on the ridge at the Store, which is a big rock formation on the southern end of the Trotternish Ridge. There was a big rock there that we used for shelter from the wind and camped behind it. There's no water up here, nor on the previous section where you traverse the ridge, so ensure you bring enough water before you depart the Quirang. Laszlo and I were fortunate enough to find a waterfall on the ridge. I can't remember if we were lost or if we actually saw it on the All Trails map, but we somehow stumbled across it and we were fortunate enough to fill up our water bottles. I've spoken to numerous people and read a number of reports, and the general consensus is that there's not much water up there, so make sure you plan ahead and take plenty with you. Nonetheless, the Store makes for a pretty impressive and remote campsite, where no doubt humans have probably been coming to camp for millennia. Our third night, we stayed in the small, charming little town of Portree, a little town a bit further south. I think Portree is a good base to stay at because you're able to book into an Airbnb or a hostel, clean up, recharge your electronics and freshen up. There's also a camping and hiking store here, so you can get some resupplies if you need to as well. Our fourth night was a wild camp in Slegachen. Slegachen is known as a little settlement on the Isle of Skye, renowned for its dramatic views of the Cullen Mountains, which dominate the surrounding landscape. The area also features the iconic Slegachen Old Bridge and the river Slegachen. The Black Cullen is a rugged and jagged mountain range known as the most challenging in the UK. In contrast, the Red Cullen, separated by Glen Slegachen, features gentler, rounded hills, popular among hill walkers. The only downside of the Slegachen campsite was that the midges here, which are small little sandflies known throughout the highlands, were terrible. If you prepare ahead and get some mesh to protect your skin and also some repellent, then I don't think it's too much of a big deal, but if you don't have those things, you might be in for an uncomfortable time. Regardless of the midges, Slegachen is absolutely stunning and I would highly recommend it as a wild camp spot. So there always seems to be a bit of mystery and intrigue around the bothies in the Highlands of Scotland. For those who don't know, bothies are generally standalone structures in remote areas of the Scottish Highlands that were traditionally used by shepherds, but are now used by hikers and outdoor enthusiasts. They play a pretty significant role in outdoor Scottish culture. So bothies along the Skye Trail provide shelter in challenging and often remote terrain of the Isle of Skye. They offer a unique experience for hikers, allowing them to stay in historic structures whilst enjoying the island's spectacular scenery. So on the Skye Trail, there's 2 bothies from what I'm aware of. The first one is by the Ruahanush headland, which is at the very start of the trail on the most northern point of the Isle of Skye. This bothy is actually a converted Coast Guard lookout, and it offers basic shelter for hikers at the start of the trail. Some people who do the trail in the opposite direction and finish here will stay in this bothy on their final night. And the second bothy is this beautiful bothy here, I don't know how to pronounce this name, so I'm not even going to try an attempt. But it's by this beautiful bay. And this bothy is closer towards the end of the trail. I think you pass it on maybe the second or the last day. I can't exactly remember. But another good option to stay in if you're looking for a good sturdy structure and you're caught out in some bad weather. It's important to note that bothies are basic shelters with minimal amenities. They're free to use but operate on a first come, first served basis. Hikers should be prepared to camp if the bothies are full or unavailable. So personally, I don't choose to stay in the bothies. I normally find that they can be a little bit loud and rowdy, especially if there's a few people in there, and they tend to be a bit of a haven for mice as well. I generally just sleep better in my tent where I'm away from other people, to be honest. Probably one of the big questions you have is how long does it actually take to hike the Skye Trail? So the hike is 128 kilometers and it's generally recommended to take 5 to 7 days to complete. I would recommend taking as much time as possible to do the hike because it is absolutely stunning and there's so much to explore with optional side hikes, especially around the Cullens and Sligacken. It took me 5 nights and 4 full days and 2 half days of hiking, so around 5 full days of hiking to do this trip. I wish I had taken around 6 or 7 days, but unfortunately I had to get back to work. The boring bits. So like every hike, there are a few boring bits on the Skye Trail, especially day 4 where you make your way from the town of Portree to Sligacken. This section has a lot of road walking and repetitive, monotonous terrain around a loch before you approach Sligacken. Section 6, which is the final section where you make your way to Broadford, is also quite repetitive, has a lack of mountains and has quite a bit of road walking as well. Highlights were definitely section 1, which was the first day where we made our way to the Quarang, and also section 3, which is where you make your way from the store into Portree. So I think another thing to keep in mind is having the right gear when you're hiking the Skye Trail. So in particular, I think having a midge net and repellent, have a solid tent. Scotland's known for rough weather. I did this hike with a Hillyberg tent, which is typically a really good resilient storm, 4-season tent. I didn't bother with hiking poles given I was filming, but perhaps useful for when you're ascending the ridge. Laszlo had some hiking poles and they really came in handy for him. Definitely having a physical map, a compass, good navigation skills, and I think also some offline digital downloaded maps. For me, All Trails works really well. It actually really saved us on the ridge where the weather was awful. Couldn't use any sort of physical navigation skills here because there's no landmarks really to look for. So these downloaded offline maps really did save us in this situation. Obviously having an SOS beacon, I have an InReach Mini, which I think is a little bit expensive and there's a subscription service for it, but anything that's going to get you out of trouble if the worst does happen. And I think on this hike as well, just because it's so remote, especially in the first few sections, it's definitely important to have an SOS beacon. Some sort of stove I think as well is obviously helpful, especially if you're taking freeze-dried meals and you need some warm or hot water. I have a Jetboil stove, it does the job, heats the water up pretty quick. But again, it doesn't have to be Jetboil. Obviously, any brand is generally going to work quite well. Thermals and wet weather gear, obviously I think this speaks for itself. You're in Scotland, you need to take wet weather gear. I will typically hike in shorts. I don't like taking trousers or waterproof trousers. And I'll generally hike in trail runners as well. Even if they get wet, I find that they get dry very quickly. And I also move a lot quicker in trail runners. And I've just never had any foot related or tendon sort of issues in my feet before. So, I'm not going to be moving away from trail runners anytime soon. And the final one is obviously some sort of water purifier. I had the Be-Free 1 litre water filter, which I absolutely love. Again, a little bit expensive. But you can just take the water purifier tablets and they do a great job. Whatever works for you. I guess that's a nice little summary of all the highlights and useful bits of information I think I can provide for the Skye Trail. Any comments or questions, drop them below. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Like I've said in the last few videos, I've got a couple big hikes coming up in the European Alps. So I'm doing 2 big ones. Can't wait to get there. It's going to be around May, June time. Doing one on one of the grand routes, and then the other one is another very popular hike, but it's one that I've been wanting to do for some time. So can't wait to get stuck into that and finally give you guys some new content and some new hikes that we can talk about. So guys, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to my Patreon members. Their names are listed here. Thank you so much for supporting this channel as I try to grow it. Thank you so much. You can also sign up to the Patreon free of charge if you'd like to just follow along. I do upload posts and photos and videos on there often, the same way that I would on YouTube Community. So it's a good way to keep up to date with what I'm doing, where I'm at, and what's coming up in the future. Yeah, so thanks again so much for supporting me on Patreon, and I'll see you in the next video, guys.